The mark of a great thief is one that's perceptive, elusive, and cunning. The mark of a legendary thief is where your existence itself is called into question. And that's what the Gray Fox is for the Thieves Guild in Elder Scrolls. So in this video, we're going to go on a deep lore dive of the Gray Fox in the Thieves Guild, specifically in Oblivion. How did the Gray Fox become who he is, and the implications of what you do with the Gray Fox in the Thieves Guild questline. But before doing so, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. Since the beginning of the early days of the Third Era, the Gray Fox had led the Thieves Guild in being successful, but also more importantly, calling into question its own existence. And a lot of this has to do with the very nature of the mantle of the Gray Fox, because it is a label, a figurehead that is held by multiple people throughout the years, and it's passed down from guildmaster to guildmaster of the Thieves Guild. The Gray Cowl of Nocturnal is what the Gray Fox wears that makes them a master thief and unable to be detected. And not only in a stopping them from committing a crime sort of way, but even their identity itself becomes undetectable. And we're given sort of direct instructions of how the Gray Cowl works in the book Instructions, the Gray Cowl. The Gray Cowl of Nocturnal shrouds the wearer's face in shadow. No light or magic of detection can penetrate its depths. To look upon Nocturnal's face without the cowl is to view the depths of the void. A man would lose his mind to see it. Recently has come to light that the Gray Cowl has gone missing. This must be at the whim of Nocturnal, for she could reclaim it easily. The Lady of Shadows has seen fit to reveal that a curse is laid upon the Gray Cowl. Whoever so wears it shall be lost in the shadows. His true nature shall be unknown to all who meet him. His identity shall be struck from all records and histories. Memory will hide in the shadows, refusing to record the name of the owner to any who meet him. He shall be known by the cowl and by the cowl alone. I am directing a triad of moth priests to investigate this tale. They shall determine the truth or falseness of the story. They shall determine the present whereabouts of the Gray Cowl, be it in Tamriel, Oblivion, or beyond. All curses can be broken, even those laid by Nocturnal. The triad shall determine how this curse may be lifted so that moth priests may safely wield the Gray Cowl, office of the unseen eye. And this gives us a very literal interpretation of the Gray Cowl worn by the Gray Fox, that it really does, as it says, wipes your identity from history. And it not only makes you undetectable, but it makes your identity a mystery. And while it does say in this book that Nocturnal allowed the cowl to be taken from her, there is sort of an interesting story of the one who originally stole the cowl from Nocturnal. Emmer Derloth is the master thief who stole the Gray Cowl from Nocturnal originally back in the early days of the Third Era. And we're given a recount of the story in the book Purloined Shadows, Chapter 1. The candle was lit, and the thief was standing there, blinking, caught. She was young, rather dirty, wearing ragged black clothes that were surely quite smart and expensive weeks ago when she had stolen them from one of the city's best tailors. The look of surprise slipped from her face, and she took on a blank expression as she put the gold back on the table. "What are you doing here?" the man with the candle, stepping from the shadows. "That's a stupid question," the girl replied, frowning. "I'm obviously robbing you." "Since nothing I have is missing," the man smiled, glancing at the gold on the table, "I would have to say that you're not robbing me. Attempting to rob me, perhaps. The question I have is, why? You know who I am, I assume. You didn't just come in through an unlocked door. I've stolen from everyone else. I've taken soul gems from the Mages Guild. I've robbed the treasury of the most secure fortress. I cheated the Archbishop of Julianos. I even pickpocketed Emperor Pelagius at his coronation. I thought it was your turn." "I'm flattered," the man nodded. "Now that your ambition has been thwarted, what will you do? Flee? Perhaps retire?" "Teach me," the girl replied, a little grin finding its way unconsciously on her face. "I picked all your locks. I slipped past all your wards. You designed them. You know how difficult that was for someone without training? I didn't come here for 6 gold pieces. I came here to prove myself. Make me your student." The master of stealth looked at the little girl burglar. Your skill is not in need of training. Your planning is adequate, but I can help you with that. What is without hope is your ambition. You are past stealing for your livelihood. Now you steal for the pleasure of it, for the challenge. That's a personality trait which is incurable, and will lead you to an early grave. Haven't you ever wanted to steal that which can't be stolen? The girl asked. Something that would make your name known forever? The master did not answer. He only frowned. Clearly I was fooled by your reputation, she shrugged, and opened a window. I thought you might want a willing accomplice on some great act of thievery which would go down in history. Like you said, my skill at planning is only adequate. I didn't have in mind an escape route, but this will have to do. The burglar slipped down the sheer wall, dashed across the shadowy courtyard, and within a few minutes was back at her room in the run-down tavern. The master was waiting for her there, in the dark. I didn't see you go past me, she gasped. You turned on the street when you heard the owl call, he replied. The most important tool in the thievery's repertoire is distraction, either planned or improvised. I suppose your lessons have begun. And what is the final test? The girl smiled. And when he told her, she could only stare. She had, it seemed, not misunderstood his reputation for daring. Not at all. Chapter 2. For the week leading up to the 8th of Hearthfire, the skies above Rindale were dark and alive as clouds of crows blotted out the sun. Their guttural squawks and groans deafened all. The peasants wisely bolted their doors and windows, praying to survival that most unholy of days. On the night of the summoning, the birds fell silent, their black, unblinking eyes following the witch's march into the glen. There were no moons to light the way, only the leader's single torch in the gloom. Their white robes appeared as indistinct shapes, like the faintest of ghosts. A single tall tree stood in the middle of the clearing, every branch thick with crows, watching the procession without moving. The lead witch placed the torch at the base of the tree, and her 17 followers formed a circle and began their slow, strange, wailing chant. As they sang, the glow of the torch began to change. It did not diminish at all, but its color became more and more gray, so it seemed a pulsating wave of ash had fallen on the witches. Then it grew darker still, so that for a moment, though the fire yet burned, it was the darkest night in the forest. The penumbra continued until the torch was burning with the color without a name, emptiness beyond mere blackness. It cast a glow, but it was an unnatural scintillation falling on the witches. Their robes of white became black. The dun among them had eyes of green and the ivory white flesh. The Nords appeared black as coal. The crows watching overhead were as pure white as the witches' cloaks. The Daedra princess Nocturnal stepped out of the pit of color. She stood in the center of the circle, the tree of pallid crows her throne, aloof as the witches continued their chanting, dropping their robes to prostrate themselves naked before their great mistress. Wrapping her night cloak around her, she smiled at their song. It spoke of her mystery, of veiled beauty, of eternal shadows and a divine future when the sun burns no more. Nocturnal let her cloak slide from her shoulders and was naked. Her witches did not raise their head from the ground, but continued their hymn of darkness. Now, said the girl to herself. She had been up in the tree all day, dressed in a ridiculous suit of mock crows. It was uncomfortable, but when the witches had arrived, she forgot all her aches and concentrated on being perfectly still. Like the other crows in the tree, it had taken considerable planning and study between her and the Master of Stealth to find the glen and to learn what to expect in the summoning of Nocturnal. Gently, silently, the burglar eased herself down the branches of the tree, coming closer and closer to the Daedra princess. She let herself break her concentration for just a moment, and wondered where the master was. He had been confident in the plan. He said that when Nocturnal dropped her cloak, there would be a distraction, and it could be quickly taken in that instant, provided the girl was in a position at the precise right moment. The girl climbed along the lowest of the branches, carefully pushing aside the crows that were, as the master said, transfixed by the princess and her naked beauty. The girl was now close enough if she only reached out her arm to touch Nocturnal's back. The song was rising to a crescendo, and the girl knew that the ceremony would soon be over. Nocturnal would clothe herself before the witches ended the chant, and the chance to take the cloak would be over. The girl gripped the tree branch tightly as her mind raced. Could it be that the master was not here at all? Was this conceivably the entire test? Was it only to show that it could be done, not to do it? The girl was furious. She had done everything perfectly, but the so-called Master of Stealth had proven himself a coward. Perhaps he had taught her a little in the months that took to plan this, but what was it worth? Only one thing made her smile. On that night when she had stolen into his stronghold, she kept one single piece of gold, and he had never suspected it. It was symbolic as stealing the cloak of Nocturnal in its way, proving that the master thief could be robbed. The girl was so lost on her mind that she thought she imagined it for a moment when a man's voice yelled out from the darkness, "Mistress!" The next word she knew she didn't imagine. "Mistress, a thief, behind you." The witches raised their heads and screamed, ruining the sanctity of the ceremony. As they charged forward, the crows awoke, burst from the tree in an explosion of feathers and toad-like cries. Nocturnal herself whirled around, fixing the girl with her black eyes. "Who art thee who dares profane?" the princess hissed, as the pitch shadows flew from her body, enveloping the girl in their lethal chill. In the last instant before she was swallowed alive by darkness, the girl looked to the ground and saw that the cloak was gone, and she answered, as she understood, "Who am I? I'm the distraction." So actually a really good story, with a lot of drama, and honestly wasn't expecting it to go in sort of this double-cross sort of way. And also I love the visualing of the naked bodies and the witches chanting. And also it kind of makes me think that this whole thing is actually kind of just a weird panty raid, honestly. Like, we're in the SpongeBob episode where Patrick is telling Mr. Krabs, "You're gonna miss the panty raid." So, Ember Daraloth was the very first thief, the very first Gray Fox who successfully committed the panty raid of Nocturnal and was able to hold on to the cowl of the Gray Fox, which once again is even more hilarious to think about if you're thinking about it as a panty raid, that the Gray Fox just is constantly wearing Nocturnal's panties on their head to hide from the world and be a master thief. But honestly kind of makes a lot of sense considering you look how Nocturnal is described in the games. She's very, for being sort of darkness and stealth in the night, she's very bodacious as well. But from then on, Ember Daraloth being the very first Gray Fox and master of the Thieves Guild, as his time was done, he passed on the Gray Cowl onto other masters of the Thieves Guild. And we get our very first introduction to Gray Fox in Oblivion. And honestly, it's kind of the main game you'll deal with the Gray Fox. There's a little bit of a throwback to the Gray Fox in Skyrim, but it's not really as important as the one in Oblivion. And this is when you join the Thieves Guild. And I have to say, the thing I enjoy about the Thieves Guild, I wouldn't say it's like the best quest line out of all of the Oblivion quest lines, but it's really good. And the important thing that the quest line shows you as a player is that you can fuck around in this world, basically. Like, there's multiple times in the quest line where it kind of asks you to break the rules of the quest giver. Or something will happen where you would normally steal something, return it to the quest giver, but when you go back to return it, the quest giver is just gone, and you don't know what to do. And you have to kind of figure it out a little bit and try and figure out how to roll with the punches of an RPG. And to me, that questline really feels like a D&D campaign, because it does throw you a lot of random things that you have to deal with. And obviously you're not rolling a d20 to figure out how well this does, but it has the feeling of what a DM would do in a D&D campaign, where they're trying to make it exciting, make it interesting, and not just purely procedural of, here's your thing to go steal, you go steal it, you bring it back, good job, here's your reward. There are times where you're kind of given things are thrown at you out of left field. And you, like any of the guild quests, you slowly work your way up through the guild. You start off as a lowly pickpocket, and then you work your way up to being a master thief, and then that's when you can start your final quest line with the Gray Fox, preparing and then executing the ultimate heist.
I see you got my message. I have need of your special gifts. There is an item hidden away in a remote monastery. I need you to go get it for me. The monastery is extensive and well guarded, so you should make sure to be well prepared. Should you succeed, I will pay you well for your services. Capital! The monastery is called the Temple of the Ancestor Moths. It is where retired blind moth priests go to wait out the rest of their days. I will mark the location on your map. Look for it in the far northeast of Cyrodiil, beyond Cheydinhal. I need you to acquire Sevilla's Stone. It is a large crystal with special properties that I need to gain advantage. Remember, do not shed innocent blood. However, there is no blood price for slaying the stone's guardians, human or inhuman. When I receive word that Sevilla's Stone is missing, I will be here, waiting for you.
And I really do enjoy that little ending part of the questline as well. It definitely gives me very Ocean's 11 vibes, actually, or other sort of heist movie vibes. It's really interesting how they really do go into the nitty-gritty of how they're going to commit this ultimate heist to steal an Elder Scroll. They are very into the weeds and the details of what you're going to need to do, and then you have to go on these quests to facilitate the heist. And it really does build and has a really satisfying crescendo at the end. The first of these quests is getting the Sevilla's Stone, which is sort of an augury stone that is being held by some blind moth priests in a random priory, which then allows the Gray Fox to look through the defenses of the White Gold Tower and be able to look and see how they were going to be able to steal this Elder Scroll. And then there's the Arrow of Extrication, which is kind of the more annoying quest of just getting the arrow, is that they send you through this wizard's keep, which is really annoying, and they don't really show you the correct path. It's very confusing. I actually did have to look up how to get through the wizard's keep to get to the wizard to then steal the arrowhead. And if you're already a member of the Mages Guild, if you kill the wizard, you get kicked out of the Mages Guild, so you actually do have to legitimately steal it. You can't just go up and kill him, which is kind of annoying. But hey, I would say that honestly is kind of the proper role-playing way of, even if you're not in the Mages Guild, to do it as a thief, because that's the whole gimmick of the Thieves Guild, is that they're not the Dark Brotherhood. But then that allows you to open up a lock in a Ayleid ruin when you're doing the ultimate heist. And then finally, you have to go on a quest to collect the boots of Spring-Heeled Jack, which is a great name. And you go on this quest and you realize that Spring-Heeled Jack became a vampire and had been a vampire for so long that he sort of forgot his previous identity as a thief who actually was working with Emmer Daeloth. And he sort of tries to trick you by pretending that he's a coward, and then once you get the boots, he then attacks you in the catacombs of his family. But you do get to see sort of a little bit of background on Spring-Heeled Jack in the book Diary of Spring-Heeled Jack, and you get to sort of get another callback to Nocturnal and Emmer Daeloth. I knew a man who was a great thief. He dared steal from Nocturnal herself. How odd that I cannot seem to recall his name. I think we were friends, but I'm not certain. In 3 days I will venture into Terran's crypt. Grave robbing alone is dangerous. Maybe I should try to find a partner. Didn't I once know a great thief? I begin this second entry in the second volume of my diary on a momentous day. Actually, it is night, the night when my second life begins. It will forever be night for me. I have become one of the children of the night, a son to Mother Wolf and brother to the Bat. I am Nosferatu, a vampire. Tonight is the first night of the rest of eternity. I rediscovered this diary today. It has been 13 years since I last wrote in it. With an eternity before and a blood hunger ever pulsing in my veins, there is little urgency for diaries, or much of anything. Emilia is calling to me. I must go. Has it really been 89 years since I last wrote? The pages are getting frail. I have rediscovered purpose, though. It took nearly a century. I have finally gained some measure of control over the blood frenzy. I think I'll try to establish a life among the living in one of their great cities. I had forgotten about this diary. I won't bother to calculate how many decades it has been since I last wrote in it. The cattle of this city knows me as Jacobin, Earl of Imbel. Centuries ago I knew myself as Spring-Heeled Jack, the famous thief. I seem to recall having a famous partner, but his name escapes me. No matter, I have grown beyond friends and partners. I rule the night here in the city. So we get another little tidbit of a little bit of vampire lore. I actually do like that he... There's a little bit of fourth wall breaking in this diary, is the fact that he does mention Nosferatu, which I think is... I don't think movies are real in Elder Scrolls, so I'm going to say it's a little bit of a callback, a little bit too direct of a callback, but, you know, it is what it is. But some interesting stuff, obviously confirming that you do lose your identity when you take on the Gray Cowl. Ember Daraloth, even though he had a partner in Spring-Heeled Jack forgot about him when he became the Gray Fox. And it seems like Spring-Heeled Jack, or Jacobin, was, unlike most people in Tamriel who do not like being vampires or don't like vampires in general, seems like he took to it pretty well, actually. And so then you go on your ultimate heist.
Are you ready for one last great heist? This is the big one. This is the heist that will be written about and talked about for decades to come. We are going to steal one of the Elder Scrolls from the Imperial Palace. Are you ready for this challenge? There is no buyer. This is for glory, not for money. Our names will become legend. I also have a personal need for this particular scroll. As for your compensation, I ask you to trust me. If my plan works, you will get a reward worth far more than mere money. Will you do it? Capital! I have worked for 11 years planning this heist. Sevilla's stone provided the last bit of information I needed. The Elder Scrolls are kept in the Imperial Palace, behind a door that cannot be breached. Sevilla's stone has revealed a path around this door. You will have to travel the old way. Once used as an escape route for Imperial Emperors, it has been forgotten for centuries. To unseal the entrance, you must sneak into the basement of the palace and activate the Glass of Time, whatever that is. In the Imperial sewers, here is the key for the gate to that section of the sewers. I picked the pocket of Okato himself to get it. My scrying with Sevilla's stone has provided clues, but not the details. I know the tools you will need there, but not the obstacles themselves. The boots of Spring-Heeled Jack will allow you to leap to an unreachable place. They will also protect you from a long fall. The arrow of extrication is the only way to unlock the final door. Take them both. Once you're inside the palace itself, you need to find the reading room. The blind priests will deliver a scroll to you there. I arranged for the notable Celia Cameron to want to read a particular Elder Scroll. Don't ask how. However, she will be unavoidably detained. You will take her place. Do not speak to the priests. They're blindfolded and will not realize it isn't her unless you speak. As the Guildmaster, I am waiving blood price for anyone you kill during this heist. However, I can't stop the Watch from putting a price on your head. I've written it down for you in this book. I've chosen you because you are the best. Good luck.
You start in the sewers of the Imperial City. You make your way into an Ayleid ruin through the Imperial City. And once you activate the Glass of Time in the White Gold Tower, which allows you to sort of go through this old ancient part of the city, make your way up to the top of the White Gold Tower, and you're able to steal from the Moth Priests a actual Elder Scroll, and you successfully succeed in your grand heist, and you're able to take the Elder Scroll with you and escape the White Gold Tower and get it to the Gray Fox. Now, this Gray Fox that you're dealing with in the Third Era 433 is Corvus Umbernox. And he actually is sort of living a double life, or was living one before he became the Gray Fox. He was the Count of Anvil as well as being a master thief. And he reveals to you once you finally do the grand heist is that he needed this Elder Scroll so that he could rewrite his name back into history, so that he could go back to the one he loves.
This ring belonged to my husband. He's been missing for over 10 years. For some reason, his name and face escape me at the moment. How did you get it? Do you know his whereabouts? Why are you showing it to me? My husband's wedding ring. I never thought to see it again. What I wouldn't give to see him once more.
By the Nine Divines, you're the... By the power of the Elder Scrolls, I name Emmer Deraloth as the true thief of Nocturnal's Cowl.
You're the Grey Fox? I've been betrayed.
I am the Grey Fox, but you have not been betrayed.
But...
I am also your missing husband, Corvus.
Corvus? Is it really you? 10 years I've waited for word from you. Why did you hide from me?
10 years ago I inherited this cowl from the former guildmaster of the Thieves Guild. I became the new guildmaster, but I also received its curse. Whoever wears Nocturnal's cowl shall have his name stricken from history. Once I donned the cowl, no one in all of Tamriel could recognize me. With the cowl, I became the Grey Fox. Without it, I was a stranger, even to you.
You mean you were unable to return?
I've stood right next to you, and you didn't even know it. I cried out to you, "Here I am! It's me, Corvus!" But you just looked at me, confused.
You have broken my heart for a second time. I cannot let the infamous criminal mastermind, the Grey Fox, become the Count of Anvil. If you try to announce yourself as Corvus, I will deny you. I will deny you before the Emperor if I have to.
I guessed you would say these terrible things to me. That is why I brought my friend along. From this moment forward, I renounce my life of crime forever. I'm passing the Gray Cowl of the Thieves Guild to its new guild master. The Gray Cowl is now yours. You are the new guild master of the Thieves Guild. You will find that history has been altered tonight. Such is the power of Nocturnal's curse that lifting it can alter time itself. If Emmer Deraloth had not stolen Nocturnal's cowl, the Thieves Guild would never have fallen on such hard times. Because of the curse, he was unable to operate in the normal world of business and society. He could only act as the Guild's figurehead. That has been undone. If you go to the Imperial City, you will find that the Thieves Guild has a guild hall on the site of the ruins of Deraloth.
Which is actually kind of a sweet story. You know, I think a lot of the time Oblivion stories are sort of irreverent and strange and sometimes weirdly sexual or just silly, but this one actually has sort of a sweet ending to it, where a guy just wants to hang up the cowl, he wants to take Nocturnal's panties off and be with his wife again, which is nice. And this sort of whole storyline does have an interesting implication with the Elder Scrolls, and we sort of get to see this a little bit in the book Lost Histories of Tamriel, which is something you steal for the Grey Fox before you begin the Great Heist. Excerpt concerning the Adric prophecies, otherwise known as the Elder Scrolls. In an earlier volume, I discussed the vagaries and influences of the Adric prophecies, more commonly known as the Elder Scrolls. Readers wanting to know the history behind the highly inappropriate appellation Adric can refer to chapters 23 through 27 of my previous work for a full explanation, as well as the incompetencies of my good comrade Theron of Mournhold, who named them thus. The influences of the archivally historic Elder Scrolls cannot be understated. Once a prophecy contained in an Elder Scroll is enacted in Tamriel, the text of the parchment becomes fixed. All readers ingest the same divine message. It becomes an historical document declaring the unequivocal truth of a past event. Scholars, even those as dim-witted as Theron of Mournhold, cannot argue the bias of the writer. Like he has with my earlier works, not even magic can affect the word written upon those ancient pages. So it seems like between some scholars there's a little bit of bickering between the two, but it does tell us a very important thing about Elder Scrolls, which in also tells us a really important thing about the universe of this world, which it seems that things in the Elder Scrolls seem to have a level of uncertainty to them, a level of wiggle room, it seems like, until something is definedly written into the Elder Scroll, which I think, if I had to guess, looking back on how things like the ending of Daggerfall goes, what happens in Skyrim, where at the end of the Dragon War, Alduin is thrown into the future with a Elder Scroll, is basically the history and the stories of Elder Scrolls is physically manifested because it's written on the paper, not the other way around, where, normally in a history book, something happens, you write it down. This one, it gets written down, and then it becomes defined history. And this sort of can lead into sort of a lot of different theories, which is that dragon breaks probably have something directly involving Elder Scrolls involved with them, because that's a inconsistent time issue, at least as we see it in the story and we try to analyze it, but that could make sense that someone was just editing an Elder Scroll, basically. And I think it is an interesting metaphor going between, in-world to us playing a video game. It's an interesting fourth wall break, because it's obvious that we as players playing the game, we get to enact our own stories onto our own Elder Scrolls. And that gives us, I think gives us a fun, interesting level of agency in our little RPG sandbox world. And it's a fun fourth wall break that sort of, as far as making the person playing the character feel special, and that their choices really do matter. And I think that's really important in a single-player RPG, is making you as the main person playing the game feel important, and that your choices matter, and that it's going to affect the history of this universe, basically. And that's kind of where I don't feel as connected to multiplayer games or MMOs, is because it's this ecosystem where everyone is working together or contributing to this world together, which has its own interesting things, but you don't feel as special or as important as when you are the one writing in the Elder Scrolls of your own universe that you get to be a part of. And so Corvus is able to write his name back into the histories of the Elder Scrolls and to solidify himself back again into history so that his wife will remember him. And so then he passes on the Gray Cowl to the hero of Kvatch. And so he can take on the mantle of the Gray Fox. And I think this could explain why we don't have a more defined background on the hero of Kvatch in Skyrim. Yes, we know what happens to the hero of Kvatch becoming Sheregorath, but we don't know his previous life, and it could be the fact that being the Gray Fox is what's obfuscating it for us, and we can't figure out what that identity is. And this could also explain the Dragonborn's lack of identity being described in future games, because the Gray Cowl does show up again in Skyrim, but this time it is owned by Pure. After a small quest, the Dragonborn who is in Skyrim gains the cowl, and he dons the Gray Fox moniker after that. All in all, I think the story of the Gray Fox, and specifically Corvus Ubernox's story as the Gray Fox, is a really interesting storyline. And it's what makes Oblivion really special to me, is that it is a really interesting story that has a lot of twists and turns and doesn't give it away to you right at the beginning. It sort of has a interesting twist at the end, because you do interact with the Countess of Anvil, but you're not sure exactly why. And there's also a really funny irony to the fact that they get Hermionius Lex to stop being the Imperial Watch Guard and send him to be the personal guard of the Countess of Anvil. And sort of a funny little punishment for him of being a thorn in the side of the Gray Fox is that then he is eventually reassigned to taking care of the Gray Fox's wife, which I find really funny. And it really shows, it's really sophisticated writing here, obviously, with irony, fourth wall breaks, like just a great, interesting story. And not to say that there aren't other parts of Elder Scrolls that are like that, I just think that this is probably one of the best storylines that you can experience in Elder Scrolls. Also doesn't help that there's a Panty raid involved. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive of the Gray Fox and the Thieves Guild. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd consider becoming a channel member, it goes a long way to helping me make more of this content. Thank you.